Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Shala from PS I Love You. Today we're going to be making this fun watercolor card using Nuvo Aqua Flow pens in festive season and the autumn woodland sets. I got these from ScrapnStamp and I'm going to start off with this Versa Fine Clair Nocturne ink, which is my favorite ink, and I'm using this removable post-it tape to create some masks. And then I just have this woodblock leaf stamp that I just had in my stash. Really what I want to be focusing on today is showing you how these Aqua Flow pens work and giving you my opinion of them. So I just start off by inking up this stamp with that Nocturne ink, and I'm stamping it on top of this post-it. I'll speed this process up a bit here. I create a couple masks and then I'm going to hit it with my heat tool just to dry that ink. It does stay quite wet and I don't want to smear it. And then I also just use my powder bag to just dry up some of that ink a bit so it doesn't smear all over that post-it. I will go ahead and cut out these masks, just fussy cutting them out here with my Cutter Bee scissors. And then we can begin. So I start out with some Canson watercolor paper and I will heat emboss with clear embossing powder. So stamping with that Versa Clair Nocturne ink, sprinkling it with that clear embossing powder, heat setting it, and then I can go ahead and let that cool just a bit because that embossing powder does stay a little bit tacky for a bit. And then I can apply my mask that I created on top. I'm using this mono sand eraser just because I did end up still getting some smearing from that ink, but again, it's not a problem with that sand eraser. So I can stamp over top, again applying some of that embossing powder, sprinkling it off, and heat setting it. Now, all I do is I just continue with this process by applying the mask, stamping, heat embossing, and I'll do that until my background is how I want it, how full I want it. So I'll do that several times. And I'll just show you this last one here. Now this didn't stamp as well as I had hoped, so I'm just using my Copic pen here just to fill that in. And sometimes the Copic marker stays wet enough for that embossing powder to collect on it. If it doesn't, that's okay. I'll show you a trick later on how I fix that. Now I'm just fixing up some of the smudges and smears that I have on my cardstock. Nice to have this handy little tool for that. And how I'm going to fix the areas that did not stamp properly is by using this pen. And this is a Ranger Emboss It pen. It is black, so I can go ahead and fix these areas here that didn't stamp properly. And that will allow me to have that sticky ink. It's a black sticky ink and it can give me fine details. And I'll just add some more of that embossing powder on and heat set it to correct any of these little areas. This pen is also really good if you want to handwrite your own sentiments. You can do that as well and add that embossing powder. So once I have those corrected, I go ahead and heat those with my heat tool. And then it looks perfect. Got one more here to do. And this is just really quite a simple and easy way to fix those mistake areas. Alright, so I'm happy with how this looks. Just cleaning my glass mat here so I can move on. And I'll just tape this piece down to my bamboo board here, as when we do watercoloring, I don't want this piece to warp too much. There may be some warping. I'm not sure how juicy these pens will be. This is my first time using them, so this is just a precaution. This thermopurple web tape, or thermo web tape here, is one of my favorites. It's not too sticky that when you remove it, it rips your cardstock or your paper. If you are still worried about it, sometimes it can happen if you press it down too hard. What I like to do is just put the tape on the back of my hand a couple times and then I can lay it on the paper and I know that it's not going to tear any of my surface. So here are the sets of pens that ScrapnStamp sent me to use. So thank you very much, ScrapnStamp. This is that festive season. You can see the colors there on the sides. And this one is that autumn woodland. And again, the colors are shown on the side there. On the back, it does say not for children under 14 years of age to use. Now, I'm not exactly sure why, but they obviously have it on there for a very good reason. So I would, recommend that you follow their recommendations. So these pens, I would probably store them either sideways like this, or I would have them with the paint nibs facing up so that they don't leak. Sometimes, I don't know if you've used a Wink of Stella pen, sometimes that one can kind of leak out, or if you have the Aqua Flow pens that you just add water to, those watercolor pens, they can leak. So either store them sideways like they are in this package here, or store them so that the cap is up. So I have this Aqua Flow water paintbrush here, and I've filled it up with water and I'm ready to go. And we'll take a look at these. I will unscrew the top so the paintbrush portion is still inside the lid. You have this little ring and you just throw that away. You don't need it anymore. Unless you have a craft project with it, I don't know, you could probably make something out of it. And so you're going to very carefully thread this portion back onto that other portion of the pen there. Now, again, you want to make sure you're not cross-threading it, that it goes on nice and easily, and you should feel a click. Now, here's the trick. You should feel a click. I wasn't feeling a click, and it didn't dawn on me that I wasn't feeling the click because I should have taken the lid off the paintbrush portion first. I was just turning that protective lid over and over again, and that was like a really silly move on my part. So yeah, it took me a while to figure that out. I wasn't the swiftest person at that point. So I recommend you actually removing the cap off of the pen and then going through this process. So I do get it to eventually go on. I wasn't too quick in that process. Have you ever had those moments where you're like, wow, that was a moment. I did not think this one through clearly, and this was exactly one of those moments for me. So I was on the struggle bus figuring this one out, so I apologize for that. So yes, I am going to finally pull it apart here and figure this out. Oh, that works better. Click, there we go, there was that click. All is good. Make sure it's nice and snug. All right. And now I can go ahead and show you how this works. So on this pen portion, you can see that's got a little brush nib there. On the pen portion, you want to squeeze it. And there are places right here that say press. And that's where you're going to press to get that watercolor to flow down through that nozzle into the brush portion. So I'm squeezing it lightly. You don't want to squeeze too hard because it can projectile out. And I wasn't sure how watery these are, so you can kind of see it coming down there through that clear portion into that reservoir. And I'm really trying to press gently. And so holding it straight up and down seemed to be the best, but you can see it starting to come there, and there it drops out. Now look at that pigment. The bristles are a bit stiff, so I'm just kind of working them into that watercolor there. Look at that, is just a beautiful pigment color. I love this orange. And you can see that it's all nice and juicy now. I'm going to put the cap back on, and look at that. That is going to be so much fun to work with. It's not bleeding through the cardstock or the watercolor paper, so that's good news. I'm going to go ahead and continue taking the little protective caps off of these, putting this back on, and again, I didn't learn the first time of removing the lid, but you turn it on, making sure you're not cross-threading it. There you go. I'm going to remove that cap, and you just turn it until you feel it click into place. Now, if you have the Wink of Stella pens, you will be familiar with this process. Again, the bristles are stiff. And again, I'm just gently trying to get that watercolor down into the reservoir. Look at this green color. Just gorgeous. Such a beautiful deep, deep green. And I will list all the colors on the screen here for you because I don't think I show them properly in this video, but look at that. Just gorgeous. And again, it does not go through the watercolor paper, which is fantastic. So I'll just continue this process with each pen, removing that yellow washer, plastic washer. Again, you just remove those. You don't need it again. You're going to click that brush nib on and then give it a squeeze. And I got a little braver and was squeezing much harder this time, so it dropped out. And then you can work that pigment into your brush and soften those bristles. And look at that. I am just so amazed at the deep, deep pigment that these have. Usually watercolors can be very translucent, and these ones are just, wow, they've got such great color to them. Again, moving on, following this process each time for each of these pens. Now these are very, very juicy, and I'm going to actually give you an idea here of how they work and how strong that pigment is. So I'm going to give you a close-up of this Aquaflow brush, and you can see it's got a nice fine brush. You can see the paint coming into the reservoir here, this clear portion. And then I'm just going to get it going. Just tapping it down first. And you can see you can get some nice fine details, some nice brush strokes with it if you want to paint directly like this. Or you can use your other Aquaflow paintbrush. And then I'm just dragging that color out just with the water brush. And look how you can just keep drawing that out. That is amazing. That is amazing how far that pigment will go. And I'm just going to zoom out so you can get the full effect of this. Look at that. Now that's a standard A2 sized card front that I'm using there, and like a little bit goes a long way with these colors. So if you want them to be really strong and vivid, you can just use them straight with the Aquaflow brush as it is, or if you want to work with them a little more like watercolors, you can definitely do that. I'm actually going to take it now on my glass media mat here, and I'm just going to scribble it on, just like you might do with your distress inks or your Zig clear markers there, or your Zig watercolor brushes. And now I'm just going to bring in my Aqua brush, picking up some of that pigment, and look at this. Like, I just think this is fabulous. So these pens really would last you a long time, and what's nice is the way that they're set up. They would be great to travel with, so then you don't have to worry about paint pans. This is just, I'm just amazed. I have so much fun with these. And so they are, going to stay wet for a bit here, and I'm just going to pick up the rest of this pigment there. Like, that is just amazing. That is going to be so much fun. And I am going to now just really go ahead here and play with them on the stamped image that we have created. So the first color I am picking up, I will list on the screen. I don't think I can quite read it right now, but I have you're just really using like typical watercolors. You're going to want to have a paper towel on hand just to dry off your brush as you switch colors. And I'll just pull the lid off, and I decided to use this on just the dry watercolor paper, and just kind of color some of it in. And I'll zoom in a little bit here just so you can see that better. I'm just dabbing a little bit in. As you can see, that's not much at all. And then I'll bring in that water pen and just really, I'm going to drag that pigment out. So I'm just making sure my brush is clean. I'm just dabbing it off on the paper towel. And then I had a little stray bristle there, but I'm just going in and adding just a little bit of water and dragging that pigment out. Again, just kind of seeing how far I can pull it out and how much there is to work with. I find this whole process of watercoloring really relaxing once you know, kind of shift gears in your brain, because we're always go, go, go. And this really forces you just to, you know, take it slower and relax and enjoy the whole process of it. And fall is my favorite time of year, and I love fall colors. So I was really grooving this whole project. I had a what was it? I think I was watching a Netflix movie as I was doing this, to tell you the truth. So it was great. I just really zoned out and was completely playing around with these. I really quite enjoy them. You know, you do want to be careful because they are, I guess the only word I can describe is juicy. They're very juicy compared to if you work with like pans. So there's a close-up look there. I like how it has flowed out, or how I was able to move that pigment out. Again, I am working on being able to relax more in watercolor and just kind of going with the flow. So on this side of the leaf, I am wetting the paper just with the Aqua brush, and then I want to try dropping in some of the pigment from that Aqua Flow. Sorry, that Aqua Flow brush. I had something caught in my throat there, I apologize. And so I'm just wetting this down. Now I did get a little bit of that water outside of the embossing there, and I'm just dabbing it up with this paper towel. That's another thing about embossing while you're watercoloring. It kind of makes a little reservoir for it. It helps kind of keep things, the color and water where you want it to go. Again, you don't want to be working directly next to wet areas when you watercolor, unless you don't mind the colors mixing. So as you can see here, I'm just kind of really, really gently dabbing the color into that water, and you can just see how saturated it gets, and that pigment just really is very strong even when you dip it into the water. And I'm just trying to decide what I want to do. I pick up another little paintbrush here, just a dry one, and moving some of that pigment a little more into the areas that I want it to be deeper. Again, this is me not being able to give up control to the process. This is where I end up overworking things. I'm going to speed this process up in a bit here. I'm never sure how much you guys want to see, so I want to keep the whole thing in so you can see the process, but I do need to speed it up so that you're not here forever and a day. So go ahead and enjoy this painting. I'll turn on some music for you, and we will catch up again once we're done. Okay, so we finished this process. I have dried it up, and now we're going to move on to creating our card base. So this is a standard A2 size card. I am just scoring this at 4 1/4. So that would be the 5.5 inches by 8 inches. 5 1/2 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 inches by 8 inches. 8.5 inches squared at 4 1/4. Sorry, math was really hard there for a minute. All right, so I've gone ahead and I have stamped and gold heat embossed some sentiments here. It's a thanks sentiment, and I've also added some of the chipped sapphire distress ink. I've watercolored that in onto the background. I've layered those sentiments on some, I believe it's Lawn Fawn Sunflower cardstock, just to set them off a little bit, and then I fussy cut around them. I am using this black licorice cardstock for the card panel here, just to mat our watercoloring. I also use the My Favorite Things wonky stitched dies, and I die cut that watercolor piece just to cut it down a bit. So I used one of those rectangle pieces. That's a great set to have, and it just adds those beautiful kind of wonky stitch lines around the outside. Using a tape runner adhesive here just to adhere this down. I'll link everything in the comments section below, or in the description below, as well as over on the ScrapnStamp blog. So make sure you check that out. And I'm just adding some foam adhesives just to pop this thanks sentiment up. Do comment down below whether you like to watch the whole process of watercoloring, or if you just like to go ahead and skip to the good parts. I always like to know what people prefer. I like to keep it in, usually just because I don't want you to miss anything. But again, let me know what your preference is, and I'll try to accommodate on my next videos. Alright, so just getting the layout for this. I like it closer to the top third portion there better. I'll remove the adhesive from these foam squares and lay this sentiment down. I really like how that gold heat embossing looks with these sentiments. And then once I've got all those removed, I can go ahead and adhere that down. And that really just finishes off the card. I decided to leave the inside blank to be able to write. I like the look of how the watercolor's dried. Look at that, it's really nice and shiny. It kind of looks like almost a stained glass effect. So overall, I really enjoyed these Nuvo Aqua Flow pens. So thank you very much, ScrapnStamp, for sending those to me to try. And yeah, I would really recommend giving them a go. Again, I think they would be great to travel with. Here is another look at that completed card. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Again, everything's over at the ScrapnStamp blog. I will leave the links down below. And have yourself a fantastic day.